This is a very popular topic for people moving long distance. Should I use a moving broker or a carrier? What's better? Who's better? And typically when people are asking these questions, they've sort of gotten maybe 2 or 3 quotes. They're talking to different salespeople and the salespeople are telling them, don't book a broker, or no, brokers have the best pricing and actually it's a great service. It can be very confusing at this point in the process. And this is, I think, where people get really frustrated. I'll cut to the chase really quickly. Do not use a moving broker. There's no reason to. 4 or 5 years ago, I maybe had a slightly different opinion, but the industry has really evolved for a lot of reasons to the point where there's really just no reason to use a moving broker. I don't know of any moving brokers that I think actually provide good service. I think they're all pretty low quality at this point. There may be 1 or 2 out there, I don't know, but I would doubt it. We review thousands and thousands of moving companies, and the broker model just basically does not work. So you need to be working with a carrier. I'll explain why not to use a moving broker, how to identify a moving broker in this video, and a lot more about that. But I also think what's super important is to understand what a carrier actually is, because there are actually different flavors of carriers as well, and to really make sure that you're comfortable with whatever you're booking. I don't think that just avoid moving brokers is really a full answer here to get you to the solution that you want, to the type of move that you want to have. You really need to understand how all these different types of companies work so you can get the right solution. If you are just sitting on a bunch of moving broker quotes right now, throw them away, forget everything that those salespeople said, just do a complete reset. In the description, there'll be a link to our moving cost calculator. And there you can just start to get connected with carriers that we've already vetted, that are verified carriers. My name's Ryan Kerrigan. I'm the founder of Move Buddha. We help over 400,000 people a year move. We've been doing this for over a decade at this point. We review thousands of companies. I like to think we know a little bit about moving. We're still learning things every day, and the industry is definitely changing pretty rapidly. So anyway, let's get through this topic though. I think it's a really important one. Let's just get into it. Before we talk about the downsides of using a moving broker, and really more importantly, what you should do instead, I do want to just make sure that you're able to identify whether you're working with a broker or a carrier. Obviously, you can ask the company. Brokers are required to put a broker disclaimer on their website. Typically, it's at the very bottom of the footer of the website. But I think the most foolproof way to understand whether you're working with a carrier or a broker is to actually use the Department of Transportation's website, which is the SAFER database. And we have a link specifically to the moving area of that database in the description in the video. And so go ahead and you can use that link. And what you'll need is either the DOT number or the MC number for the company. You can use the name, but you really want to get the DOT or the MC number. Either number will work. Those numbers should be on the quote. They should be on the footer or somewhere on the website. It should be fairly easy to get one of those 2 licensure numbers. And then you're going to go ahead and put that into the SAFER database. And the first thing to look at would be at the very top, there's entity type, and that'll have carrier or broker. And there's your answer right there, is what are they licensed to do? If they're licensed as a broker, I would avoid that right away. If they're licensed as a carrier, you should be good to sort of continue the vetting process. Some other stuff that I would look at is whether or not the US DOT, the status of the US DOT number is active or inactive. That's always a good thing to look at. If they don't have an active DOT number, then they are not licensed to cross state lines. In some states, you actually need a DOT number to do any type of moving, but just generally you cannot cross state lines with a moving truck if you don't have a federal DOT number. So important to have an active status there. The legal name and DBA, I also think are good to look at real quick. So one of those 2 names, so either the legal name or the DBA, which DBA stands for doing business as, one of the 2 names in there should match what's on the paperwork, right? So some companies will use their legal name, some companies will have a DBA, totally normal, but one of the 2 names should be aligned with the company that you think you're working with. I have seen situations where companies give out DOTs that are active that aren't actually theirs to just sort of like trick people. So that's always a good thing to make sure that the DOT you're looking at is the right one for the company you're evaluating. Lastly, I think another good thing to look at is the mileage in the top right. That could be a really interesting stat. Generally, I think when it comes to long distance moving company, especially if you're moving over 1,000 miles, you do want to go with a larger company. There's just a lot of quality reasons around that. Smaller companies, if they even go that far, I think are just a lot riskier to work with when you get into like very long distance moves, like anything 1,000 miles plus. So if you see a very low number in that mileage category, it's not an immediate red flag. Sometimes that section's actually just wrong or the data is outdated, but it would just be a reason to go further on whatever company you're looking at. Why is maybe they're only, why is there no mileage, or why is there only a couple thousand miles? I would say, anything from 500,000 miles and up is just a good sign that the company's really, they have a lot of active trucks. They're doing a lot of long distance moves. They're experienced in it. So that would be, a pretty good indicator. You can also look at things like how many tractor trailers they have registered, how many drivers, which are also data points that are in the Safer database to sort of help you understand the size of the company as well. But yeah, this could be a really helpful resource to just get some sort of basic info on a mover. All right, so we've established how to make sure that you're working with a carrier. I just want to go back to though, specifically why you would want to avoid a broker, and then also get into sort of the nuances of carriers as well, because I think a lot of people get confused when they book a carrier as to like what they're actually booking. So first off, with a broker, what's actually happening is you call into a broker, you book your move, and then they take that and they go and they find a carrier to sell it to, right? So they are selling your move to another company. And at that point, they basically have no liability or no accountability. The laws are such that now all the liability is transferred to whatever moving company they sold your move to. The broker also has their money at that point too, because the deposit that you put down is the money that the broker collects, and that doesn't go to the carrier, that stays with the broker. And then the carrier gets their money on moving day and ultimately on delivery day as well. It tends to be 2 additional payments there. And that's a huge difference here between a carrier where even if you're putting down a deposit, which is fine, I think there is a lot of information out there to not put down a deposit. And I think that it's getting at the same core issue, which is just don't book a moving broker. But plenty of legit carriers ask for a deposit, and that's a totally fine practice. Again, if you're booking with a carrier and a good carrier, because they're going to be liable for the move throughout the entirety of the move. So they're not selling it to someone else. It's going to be on their DOT number for the entirety of the move, and they're liable and accountable to it. So the likelihood that they set up the estimate correctly, that they tell you all the correct information, for instance, like how long it's going to take to deliver, a broker might say, it'll take 2 days when really it's going to take 4 weeks. Whereas a carrier will be way more forthright with what the prep needs to be, what the delivery time is going to be, how the claims process works if there is some damage. All of that, they'll sort of make sure to get to you up front so that the move goes as smooth as possible. They don't want any complaints or any issues because again, they are liable. I will say though that the one thing that really messes people up is just because you've booked with a carrier does not necessarily mean that is going to be the company that shows up on move day. I know. Very confusing, but for long distance moves, especially things like cross-country moves or moves that are 1,000 miles plus, the way that carriers work is it's a carrier network. So there's a broker network where basically they're just selling your move to a company, but there are also carrier networks where it's basically a bunch of different regional moving companies that are all sort of bounded together by really tight agreements to basically all work and cooperate together to accomplish moves. And that's really how most long distance cross-country moves are done is through networks, through carrier networks. That's going to be something that sort of throws people through a loop. The company that they think they've gotten hoodwinked or scammed, or that the van line lied to them and they were told a certain that it was going to be all done by the company and then a different company shows up. Again, that's not super uncommon. That is how the whole industry works. There's really not a national moving company that provides moves everywhere on their own trucks. It all is typically like a network of agents or carriers. They're all separate companies that come together to do the move. Really though, the key differentiator here is with a broker, they're selling your move and the liability then goes away to the actual carrier. With a carrier, regardless of if they're doing the move or they're working with their network to do the move, the liability stays with them. So they have way more incentive and way more accountability to actually make sure the move goes well. And so that's why just generally with a carrier, you're going to get a higher quality experience. You still need to find good carriers, which, again, In the bottom description here, we have our moving cost calculator linked. Definitely go and check that out. We recommend great regional movers if you're just moving like 200, 500 miles. We recommend a lot of great national van lines. And if you're moving long distance or cross country. And if you're just completely overwhelmed by this process, which at this point, some people are, if you've made it this far through this video, hopefully this clarifies some stuff for you, but it may also have just, your eyes might be glassed over at this point. That's totally fine. We have in that moving cost calculator tool, some alternatives to professional movers as well, such as moving containers, freight trailers, rental trucks, just other things that you could do, labor only services to help like load a rental truck or a moving container. So there's other ways you can accomplish the move that don't involve professional moving companies, because it can be sometimes overwhelming to book a professional moving company, and we totally get that. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, super appreciative. Go ahead and check out our website, like the video, do all the things. All right, thanks everybody.